Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're doing a deep dive into the neuroscience of resilience and focus. Let's be real. If you've ever found yourself hopelessly distracted, completely drained, or just totally frustrated because you can't seem to force your brain to pay attention, you are definitely not alone. We've all been there, right? We're going to demystify the hidden chemical machinery working behind the scenes inside your brain. And more importantly, we're going to show you exactly how to hijack your internal stress and reward systems to completely transform your focus and ultimately your entire life.
Listen to these words for a second. I realized this is it. This isn't going to be like a kid who had some problems. You're going to end up being a ward of the state. I was totally feral. Now, you might be thinking that was spoken by a lifelong criminal, right? Actually, no. That was Dr. Andrew Huberman, a highly respected neurobiology professor at Stanford. He went from being a quote-unquote feral, parentless youth deeply entrenched in the underground skateboard and punk rock scenes to becoming literally one of the top neuroscientists in the world. Talk about a total 180. He's living, breathing proof of the incredible power of neuroplasticity. It's honestly wild to think about. A youth filled with truancy and even a stint in juvenile detention? That doesn't have to be a permanent life sentence. Right around age 20, he made this pivotal decision to pursue a PhD and get really into fitness, and that actually physically began to rewire his brain, paving the way to where he is now at Stanford Medical School. The profound takeaway here is that our brains just aren't permanently locked into our early dysfunctions, our bad habits, or our traumas. You can literally rebuild the physical structure of your mind. It's like upgrading your brain's hardware from the inside out.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Here's our roadmap for the explainer today. We're going to hit 6 key areas. First, rewiring the feral brain. Then, the chemistry of focus. Next up, dopamine, the motivation engine. After that, action drives the mind. Then, we'll cover real-time biological tools. And finally, rest, recover, and rewire. Let's get started. Section 1, rewiring the feral brain. We need to start by looking at our biological baseline. Before we can understand how to actually change the brain, we've got to look at its fundamental operating system, The nervous system basically handles 5 main tasks: sensation, perception, feelings, thoughts, and behaviors. But here's the kicker. Ultimately, the brain's primary goal is actually incredibly simple. It's constantly just trying to match your internal state to the external demands of your environment. Think about it like this. Imagine sitting in a super quiet, low-stakes meeting right after a wildly stressful bumper-to-bumper commute. Your internal energy is completely misaligned with the calm room around you, and because of that, you feel agitated, stressed, and totally impatient. But when your internal and external states finally match up, that's when you feel regulated and fully capable. Moving on to Section 2, the chemistry of focus. Let's look at the engine of change. Now, what's really fascinating here is how changing the adult brain really just comes down to a highly specific neurochemical cocktail. It's a 3-part mix. Acetylcholine acts as the spotlight of your focus. It literally highlights whatever you're paying attention to. Then you've got norepinephrine, which creates agitation and alertness. And finally, dopamine, which acts as the reward and buffer. But here is the absolute game changer, the massive paradigm-shifting takeaway. That agitation and stress you feel at the start of a task, it's completely biologically normal. In fact, and this blew my mind, it is entirely required. You absolutely need that norepinephrine to kickstart the learning process. So feeling stressed when you sit down to do hard work doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It just means your brain is waking up to do the work. Stress isn't the enemy here, guys. It's the trigger. So when you combine that initial agitation we just talked about with intense focus and a real sense of urgency, you activate this biological circuit called DPO. That stands for duration, path, and outcome. Think of it kind of like learning to drive a stick-shift car for the very first time. Your brain is suddenly hyper-analyzing every single second. Like, how long will this clutch take to release? That's duration. What is the exact physical path my foot needs to take? That's the path. And what's going to happen if I stall this thing in traffic? That's the outcome. Analyzing those 3 elements, duration, path, and outcome, under a state of heightened alertness is exactly the combination that marks your adult synapses for permanent change.
All right, Section 3, dopamine. This is your motivation engine.
Okay, we need to completely bust the myth right now that dopamine is just some cheap reward you get for crossing a finish line. That's not the whole story. Imagine you're working on this grueling, totally frustrating project. As you put in the effort, your noradrenaline rises, and physical stress literally builds up in your body.
Eventually, you hit this hard ceiling. Neuroscientists call it the quit threshold. This is that exact agonizing moment where your cognitive control shuts down and you just want to throw your hands up, walk away, and give up entirely. But when you recognize a milestone, when you pause and tell yourself you are actually making progress, bam, dopamine is released. It acts as a biological buffer. It literally smacks down that noradrenaline quit counter, instantly giving you back the restored energy and the mental space you need to keep pushing forward. So the crucial point to remember is that because of this incredible biological mechanism, your most sustainable fuel comes from internal rewards, not external gold stars. If you link your dopamine release to tiny internal milestones, literally just telling yourself out loud, hey, I'm on the right path, I'm doing the hard work, you create an almost infinite amount of forward energy. It's a real game changer. Don't attach your dopamine to the trophy at the finish line. Attach it to the friction of the process itself.
Let's transition to Section 4. Action drives the mind.
Let's contrast two completely different ways we usually try to handle stress and focus. The mind-first approach is what, let's be honest, most of us do, and it is largely futile. Trying to suppress spontaneous negative thoughts and sit there negotiating with your feelings, it's a biological dead end. You simply cannot think your way out of a thinking problem. But the behavior-first approach, that is incredibly concrete. Elite performers, think of guys like David Goggins, use forward physical movement to forcefully override and change their internal state. You see, you can't easily control the monkey mind with the mind itself, but you can absolutely control it by moving your physical body. Forward action actually triggers that dopamine circuitry we just talked about, making any future action even easier. Simply put, mood follows action, not the other way around. Which brings us to Section 5. Real-time biological tools. We want to equip you with the exact physical levers you can pull to steer your mental state right in the moment you hit that quit threshold. And the absolute fastest way to voluntarily drop your autonomic arousal level is something called the physiological sigh. Actually, try this with me right now if you can. Step 1, take a double inhale through your nose, just a quick double sniff. That second inhale fully dilates these tiny little sacs in your lungs. Okay, step 2, do a long, extended exhale through your mouth to offload the maximum amount of carbon dioxide. Moving your diaphragm exactly like this acts as a literal remote control for your brain. It immediately calms your nervous system down in real time. It's almost like magic. And this brilliantly illustrates another real-time tool you have right now, your vision. Did you know your eyes are actually brain tissue pushed outside of the skull? I know, kind of wild, right? But how you use them directly dictates your stress levels. When you're in focal vision, like your pupils are fully dilated and you're aggressively zeroed in on a target, like your phone screen or a monitor, it physically heightens your stress and your cognitive focus. It burns massive amounts of neurological energy. But when you switch to panoramic vision, physically relaxing your gaze to take in your entire periphery and just look out at the horizon, it directly lowers your stress. Narrowing our eyes narrows our mental focus, while relaxing our gaze actively conserves our brain's energy. Finally, let's move to Section 6, rest, recover, and rewire. Now, here is the greatest paradox of neurobiology. You don't actually rewire your brain while you're doing the hard work. No way. That rewiring only happens during deep rest. Protocols like deep sleep, yoga nidra, clinical hypnosis, that panoramic defocusing we just mentioned, or even the optic flow you experience while walking or running, these are the things that actually turn off the brain's heavy duration, path, and outcome machinery. Let me put it this way. Intense, stressful focus marks the synapses for change, but deep rest is when your brain actually executes that structural change. If you want to learn faster and build resilience, you have to deliberately master the art of completely turning off your analytical mind. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a direct challenge. Will you use your behavior to change your mind today? Seriously, think about it. Knowing that friction and stress are not signs of failure, but just the biological entry gates to focus, that changes everything. Knowing that your actions ultimately control your thoughts means the power is completely 100% in your hands. Embrace that initial friction, step into action, and take absolute control of your own neuroplasticity. Thanks so much for joining me today, and hey, keep moving forward.